Well, Abasi Abiel, co-founder and, of course, policy analyst at Verit Africa, reacting to the NBS plan to rebase the economy. But let's have this conversation now on the rebasing of the economy with Moses Waniko, who is the principal statistician and national account specialist at the National Bureau of Statistics, and of course Dr. Ayo Anthony, the head of prices and trade, also at the National Bureau of Statistics. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. I mean, yes, that's but see you reacting to what you plan to do. But first, before you react to what he has to say, I'd like to get your understanding, help us understand what rebasing is about. But let's start from Moses Waniko. Let's start from you. So first, what does it mean to rebase the economy, and what structural changes do we expect to see after this exercise? I think we should start from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. So for rebasing, really, the economic is not static. The economic is dynamic, and then you could have changes in production, changes in consumption pattern. You could have new products in the economy. So there is really need for you to revisit the framework for GDP compilation, and in doing that, you would need to rebase, periodically. By international standards, you should do that every 5 years, but most countries do not do that, every 5 years, because you need a lot of funding to do that, to conduct big surveys, get, a lot of data that would go into that framework. So the SUT supply and use table is actually the framework, the bedrock, really, of the rebasing. So every data that is gotten, in terms of GDP components and compilation, goes into that framework of the supply and use table. So the rebasing is just to revisit the framework, and of course to help properly reflect economic changes and true picture of the economy. Yeah.
But let me also follow up of the question. I mean, why is it important at this time? Is it because we are way beyond when we're supposed to rebase? I mean, the according to international standards, it's supposed to be every 5 years. Why is it important at this time? Is that why you're coming up with this plan?
Yes. So we started the entire process in 2018. Like I said, we are supposed to be doing that every 5 years. The last base year was 2010. So ideally, after 5 years, we were supposed to have done another rebasing.
Right.
But because we didn't have the funding that it would require to conduct very big surveys, so we had to wait until we get enough resources to do that. So really, it's important that we do that, because it's a standard practice for every national statistical office.
So, and like I was asking, what structural changes do we expect to see after these, exercises?
So, for the preliminary results, we've realized that there is a shift in terms of the weights of crude petroleum and natural gas, and then the weight of real estate to the economy. As it stands today, from the preliminary results that we have, crude petroleum and natural gas used to take the 3rd position. Now it is the 5th position. And then real estate that used to have the 5th position is now the 3rd position, based on the 2019 numbers that we have currently.
I'll stay with you a little bit. I mean, one interesting thing about this rebasing is that the NBS is planning to include hidden and illegal activities in its calculation. But why is it important for the overall GDP calculation? Because to some economists, I mean, that's more like endorsing illegality. Respond to that before I go to Dr.
Ayo. Well, the System of National Accounts 2008, Chapter 5, Chapter 25 specifically, allows you to include illegal activities, not only illegal underground, activities, informal activities. It really has nothing to do with issue of whether we're legalizing some of these activities. Why we intended to put the illegal activities into the GDP was as a result of some of the consultations that we had initially. So it's actually a product of the consultations that we had earlier. Actually, we have numbers for just drug, narcotics, and then the numbers that we have is really insignificant. It's about 0.08 or so, percentage to GDP, which is really, really insignificant. That number came from NDLEA, you know, and then we're also making consultations to see that at the end of the day, based on the feedback that we get from the public, if that can also continue to stand. If our wide consultations profile that this is not the way to go, of course we'll do what is best for the country. But like I said, the system of national accounts, which is a methodological document, allows for that to be done.
We're still going to go back to what Bassey said earlier. We'll react to that. But let me come to Dr. Anthony. I mean, we know that rebasing the economy, it rely heavily on data. Walk us through, major data sources to use in calculating these, and by what methodology are you calculating this? I think we need to also hear from you.
It's okay. Consumer Price Index.
Right.
It's an index that we use to derive the inflation rate for the economy. Now, rebasing is all about adjusting two reference periods. The price reference period, right, which is popularly known as base year, and the weight reference period. These two periods presently in Nigeria is 2009. You are comparing prices in 2024, 2009. You can see the base period is relatively far to the current. Also, the weight shows the consumption pattern of people living in Nigeria. Consumption pattern shows how people in Nigeria expend their resources among the items in their scale of preference. Consumption pattern changes over time. So when you talk of rebasing of CPI, is bringing the weight reference period closer to the current period. That means capturing the recent consumption pattern of people living in Nigeria, and also comparing prices with more recent period. Now, what does this involve? It involves a lot of data, and these data are gotten through survey. The primary survey is what we call Nigerian Living Standard Survey. It is this survey that gives us how people in Nigeria spend their income. Not only that, this survey, a single survey may not be sufficient for this kind of analysis. The Bureau also embarked on another survey in 2024 called Survey of Rare Items. When I say rare item, durable goods, cars, phone, what people don't buy often, but they buy them. So a survey was done in 2024 to capture the expenditures of people living in Nigeria on this item. So after these surveys, we do what we call analysis. It is the analysis that gives us the weights. When they say weight now, how important is this phone in CPI computation? How important is food? How important is housing? How important is transportation? Right. How important is health? How important is restaurant? The weight shows how important they are in the computation of consumer price index. So this analysis involves what we call CPI rebasing.
So there are two components in this rebasing exercise. I mean, there's the GDP rebasing, and there's of course consumer price in the CPI rebasing. We must also be able to perhaps explain more for ordinary Nigerians out there. I mean, why should they care? How does it affect them going forward? I think let me still stay with you. Thank you very much.
It's just that by chance the Bureau is embarking on these two rebasing simultaneously. It's not compulsory the two are done simultaneously, but because the Bureau wants us to have indicators that government, private sector, and household can use in their business and rational decision making. That is why we are embarking on these two simultaneously, and it's for the good of the system. Now, what is the importance of this rebasing? Rebasing for GDP will give us the economic size of our economy, the productive and the consumption size. For CPI computation, it will help us to measure the current inflationary pressure, which will help the monetary authority on how to adjust their monetary policy rate to target the inflation reduction. And that brings us to, because of our time, that brings us to the argument, I mean, which Bassey, the clips we listened to earlier, and the fact that you are rebasing the GDP to 2029 to reflect 2029 value, and of course the CPI, the 2024. So his argument, and some other economists are saying, look, this doesn't tally. And they're saying that
using a ground zero methodology to calculate your prices does not impact the real value of inflation of prices. I mean, that means that it creates a kind of distortion, and it gets the CBN or the Monetary Policy Authority confused to be able to review their interest rate in relationship with this consumer price index, the new figure. Speak to us about that. How would you address this concerns?
Thank you very much. It's not compulsory the base year for GDP and CPI are the same. These two macroeconomic variables are not the same. Prices is highly volatile compared to output, which GDP measures. Not only that, GDP rebasing started since 2018. The survey, one of the surveys that we use in rebasing GDP was conducted in 2019. But for CPI, the major survey we use for CPI computation started in 2023. Then, from the CPI computation manual, it's written there in chapter 9,
right,
section 9.27. Our stakeholders should consult it. It is written there that the price reference period should be a year before the release of the new series. The new series will be released January 2025. What is the year that precedes 2025? 2024. So chapter 9 of the CPI computation manual, section 9.27, well explicitly written there. That is the reason. And another thing is this: the base period for prices should not be too far from the current. CPI doesn't measure price level. What we measure is changes in prices.
All right.
Changes in prices. And if you want to capture changes in price that reflect current inflationary pressure, the gap between the current and the base should not be wide.
Okay, let's wrap it up now because of our time. I mean, Moses, speak to us about, as we await the numbers. I understand that the numbers will be out at the end of this month. What should we be expecting? How do we manage public perception with regards to these numbers? How does it matter to the policymakers? If you can make it a policymaker, business owner out there, the small and medium enterprise operators out there. So how should they take these numbers? How should they work with these numbers? As we wrap up now quickly.
Okay, a lot has gone into this process. We've collected a lot of data. We've conducted a lot of surveys that have provided input into the entire process. I think that the numbers that we have at the end of this month would inform policies. Of course, you see dynamics in terms of the distribution, across sectors. You see dynamics in terms of the growth rates beyond just the aggregate numbers. I want to believe that once the numbers are out, policymakers can look at these numbers, see sectors that are doing well, those that are not doing well, and even private sector. They can actually look at areas they can invest, areas that can be strengthened, and potentially this can help to take decisions.
Well, I think we just need to leave this conversation here. It's something that we need to continue this with. Thank you so much, Moses. Waniko is the principal statistician and specialist in national count at the NBS. Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Ayo Anthony is head of prices and trade at the NBS. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on News Night.